Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk some more about aspect patterns. Today we're going to talk specifically about the wedge. This isn't like, it is an aspect pattern. It's not, when I see it in a chart, I know it's a wedge. I don't tend to think of it as like an aspect pattern. In my mind, I think of like the aspect patterns as being like the mystic rectangle, which the wedge is a half of. Essentially, the mystic rectangle is made up of two wedges. So I'm going to do this one first and then do the mystic rectangle one. So when I see this aspect pattern in a chart, I don't always think of it as like a major aspect pattern like I would the mystic rectangle or or the yod or whatever. But it is an aspect pattern. It should be mentioned, especially as like an introduction to the mystic rectangle. But before I get started, I want to make mention that the way that I look at aspect patterns, or really anything, when I make these videos, this is how I personally read them, right? I'm not saying that the way that I do it is universally correct. It's correct for me. It may not be correct for you. And I'm not going to argue with you about it, about that. However you want to read these different aspect patterns or learn how to read them or what have you is completely up to you. As is your right. So agree with me, disagree with me, whatever. This is just kind of how I will attack these in a chart. If I'm reading your chart, this is what I would be doing with it, with this pattern or with any of the aspect patterns that I'm going to be talking about or have been talking about. Okay, so anyway, the wedge, I'm going to use the star cards. I'm not going to so much use planets because we're going to use sign cards today and the aspects. So a wedge is going to be, you're going to have two planets in opposition. And then you're going to have two planets. So you're going to have a planet here, and a planet over here. So you're going to have an opposition. You're going to have a trine. And you're going to have a sextile. So this really is, half of a mystic rectangle, because with a mystic rectangle, you would have two oppositions. You would have two sextiles and two trines. So this is one half of that. So you'll have planets. You'll have at least three planets, right? You might have more than three. You might have like a conjunction, two planets conjunct, and they're opposing one planet. And then there's the planet over here that's sextile, the conjunction, and trine, the opposition planet. But they all generally, most people want to see them all in masculine or feminine signs or polarities or yin and yang polarities. So like you might have, let's say, I don't know, you have a planet in Aries, you have a planet in Libra, and then you have a planet in Sagittarius. So you have the planet in Libra and the planet in Sagittarius. Let's say we've got one planet at 15 Libra, one planet at 15 Sagittarius. Those are sextile. Then you've got a planet at 15 Aries. That's opposite the planet in Libra and trine the planet in Sagittarius. That would be a masculine wedge, since those are in the masculine signs. I know some people aren't crazy about using the terms masculine and feminine for the energies. To be quite honest, I'm not crazy about it all of the time myself. But for ease of learning, because I want to meet people where they are, learning-wise, I figured that might be the best way to put it. But there are other terms that you can use to describe masculine and feminine energy. Yin and yang are one of them. Yin being female, yang being masculine. There are other things too that you can use. Think of it however you want. But this would be a masculine The Sagittarius, Libra, and Aries one would be a masculine, example of a masculine wedge. And then let's say you had, taking that one off the table for a second, let's say you had a planet in Taurus, a planet in Scorpio. So those planets would oppose each other. Let's say you had a planet at 15 Taurus, planet at 15 Scorpio. And then you have a planet at 15 Cancer. So the planet, let me put it here actually. So the planet at 15 Cancer would trine the planet at 15 Scorpio and would sextile the planet at 15 Taurus. And they do not have to be that exact. Each thing being, you know, 15 degrees or whatever, each planet doesn't have to be that exact. But that is an example of a feminine or yin wedge. So these aren't, I mean, I think it's not that they're not important. It's just when I see them in a chart, I'll obviously play around with the aspects, but I'm not thinking, when I see this, when I see like an opposition and a trine and a sextile to something, I'm not thinking, oh, a wedge. Not always. I'll definitely play around with those planets and the energies involved, but I don't automatically always think of it as a wedge or as an actual aspect pattern. I definitely look at it though. It just doesn't always register. I guess doesn't always register in my mind as a major aspect pattern. I would think if this is more of a minor one, because really it doesn't cause too many problems. I mean, obviously the opposition needs to be balanced. The opposition is probably, again, it's probably the most important part of this, balancing the opposition. The masculine wedges tend to be, and you would also have to take the houses these were falling in and everything else in the chart into account, right? You just can't look at this wedge aspect pattern. But the masculine wedges do tend to be more out there, like putting it out there into the world, the energy out there, whereas the feminine, if you got a wedge in feminine energy and the feminine polarity, it might be a little bit more internal. It might manifest a little bit more internally, but again, this would really depend on where everything is, what everything that's going on in your chart, the houses these fall in, all of this kind of stuff. You would want to take all of that into account because that might not always ring true. Sometimes with these, and I say sometimes because, you know, if you've got, and I'm going to leave actual, let me see if I can say this. So you, so if you have somebody who feels like, regardless of if they're male or female, if they feel more masculine and they have a feminine wedge, it might be more frustrating to them. It could be. It could be a little bit more frustrating, not super frustrating or anything, but there might be a little bit more internal frustration. If you have somebody that's more, is more feminine, whether they're male or female or whatever, and they feel more feminine and they have a masculine wedge, this also might be kind of frustrating in a different way. So if you're looking at your own chart, definitely take that kind of thing into account here and how maybe you actually feel or identify. And if you happen to have a wedge, if the wedge ends up lining up with how you identify or how you feel you are, it could explain if there's it could explain any frustration that you have either outwardly or inwardly. It wouldn't be the whole picture at all, but it could explain some things maybe. Now, if you have a wedge, because you could have a wedge where, you know, you might have something that looks like a wedge. Let me rephrase that. You might have something that looks like a wedge. And they're not all in the same, you know, masculine or feminine polarity, all the planets. It's up to you if you want to count that as a wedge. I don't know, since this aspect pattern is smaller and it does seem more minor to me, it does. Overall, to me, it does. You may not feel the same way about the wedge, but to me, it feels more minor overall as far as aspect patterns go. For this one, personally, I do kind of like to see them all in the same polarity. Masculine or feminine polarity, personally, to count it as a wedge. But you might feel different about that, and that's fine. I would say if you're going to count them, if they're in different polarities, different masculine or feminine signs, and like, let's say, I don't know, let's say you've got one planet at like 1 degree Sagittarius, a planet at 1 degree Gemini, so those are opposing each other, and then you have a planet at, I don't know, 28 degrees Capricorn. So you've got one planet in the feminine polarity, and then you've got 2 planets in the masculine polarity. I mean, you could count that maybe as like a much weaker masculine polarity. You could, if you felt inclined to. I mean, I wouldn't stop you, but I would think that it would weaken the wedge, for sure. I would think it would. Anyway, I'm gonna get going. But if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube or like our videos or whatever the hell people do on YouTube, you can find us by searching for Let's Fuck with Astrology in the YouTube search bar. If you want to follow us on Instagram, you can find us at Let's Fuck with Astrology. I'm at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Apaterno Astrology on Instagram. If you do the Reddit thing, come join us on the subreddit Let's Fuck with Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.